not something where something physically on your body. When you enter a state of janaba, that means that you are spiritually impure, and hence you need to purify yourself. So when it comes to things like khabath or things that are physically impure on your body, the way to make yourself pure is by physically removing those things from your body, right? So as an example, as we're going to learn about the things that are inherently najis, if you come into contact with them and a part of your body becomes najis because of that, for you to become pure, you need to remove that from your hand or from your part of your body which has become impure. But when it comes to spiritual impurity goes away by actions such as performing wudu or by performing ghusl, right? So as an example, if you are in a state of janaba, you need to perform ghusl janaba. If you need to perform your prayers, body may be completely tahir, but you need to perform wudu in order to become pure. So khabath and hadath are two states of impurities, and to perform and to become in a state of purity, there needs to be different types of treatment that needs to be provided. So today, inshallah, we're only going to be talking about those items that are inherently najis. So as I said, by default, everything you see around you is najis, is tahir, is pure. But there are 10 things that have been considered by our fuqaha to be inherently najis. Meaning that they are, in their essence, they are najis. There are some things that can never become pure, but they have the ability to make other things impure, right? So what are those things? The first two things that we're going to talk about in the next slide are urine and feces, right? So urine and feces are things that are inherently impure. If you come into contact with those things, you're also going to become impure, or that part of your body is going to become impure. Then you have semen, or what you call mani, right? That is also going to be impure by itself. A dead body, or what you call mita, that is also something which if you touch and if it's moist, it makes you impure as well. Blood or dam is something that also is inherently impure. A dog or a pig are also considered to be inherently impure or najis. A disbeliever, and in this case, when we talk about disbelievers, there's few categories. So, for example, an atheist is a disbeliever, or someone who does not believe in the Abrahamic religions, who's not a Christian, who's not a Jew, or someone who completely denies the fundamentals of Islam, though they may consider themselves to be Muslim, but they consider some of the aspects of the usul-ud-din that they don't believe in. They might have a doubt about prophethood or about imama or about what you call the resurrection day. So that means that you haven't really gone to a level of becoming a Muslim. Even though you profess that you are a Muslim, you may be considered a disbeliever. Alcoholic liquors like wine and beer, specifically wine and beer, but any kind of fermented drink that causes intoxication is also considered to be impure. And then lastly, the sweat of an animal, especially the camel, which persistently eats najasa. So camels are naturally, we eat camels, we slaughter camels, but there are certain types of camels or certain animals who feed on najasa for a long period of time. Those kind of animals, the sweat from those animals, though the animals may themselves be pure naturally, but because they've been eating so much filth, maybe because they've been living in an environment where there's a lot of filth, that they've been feeding off it, that the sweat of those animals then becomes impure as well. Okay, so everything is tahir except for these 10 things which are inherently by their essence considered to be impure or najis. So if you look at urine and feces as an example, right? So this table shows you a good summary of, and there's I think Pasha Bhai can share all the slides with you, but basically what this shows you is that, okay, we're talking about urine and feces, but whose urine and feces is impure? So when we say that the urine and feces is impure, we're talking about primarily those animals whose blood is flowing, or what you call, they've got nafsun sa'ila. What does that mean? That means that when you slaughter an animal, right, and if their blood gushes out with force, that means that they're animals whose blood is flowing. And those animals, if they are haram to eat, right, you can still slaughter them and they might have blood gushing out. But those animals, their feces and their urine is impure. As an example, you look at carnivorous animals like lions and wolves and dogs as an example. We cannot eat them. But if you slaughter them, their blood will gush out. So their feces and their urine, if you come into contact with, is impure. So what happens is that if you touch it, your hand, or if you touch it by your hand, it becomes najis. However, there are animals that we slaughter that we are allowed to eat. their urine and feces is considered pure. So like cows and goats and sheep that we are able to slaughter, they also have blood that gushes out with force. But because we can eat them, their urine and feces is considered to be pure. So if you come into contact with them, then that is fine and your hand remains, or your part of your body remains pure. However, if those animals that are considered to be halal for us to eat, they have been living in an area where they have been consistently eating najasa, right? You might find they're in a restricted area and they have got no source of food. Sometimes animals might end up eating their own excrement, as an example. And if they persistently do that, then the ruling we have is that until and unless you can make them pure by consistently giving them halal, or by giving them pure things to eat, what that means is that their urine and their feces will be impure. So as a cow is someone that's halal to eat, that is flowing blood, so their urine and feces should be pure. But if they've been eating consistently najasa, then until and unless you can purify them over a period of time that they eat normal things that they're supposed to eat, then their urine and feces is impure. What about those animals whose blood does not flow with force? As an example, like fish. Fish is an animal, or is a creature that does not have a vein. So when you slaughter it or when you cut it, there's no blood that gushes out with force. For those animals, their urine and feces is considered to be pure. Even if those animals, you can't eat them. So as an example, you've got certain types of reptiles like snakes and frogs. Their blood does not gush out with force, right? But we can't eat them. But their urine and feces is considered to be pure. However, in some instances, what is mentioned here is that, and that's for feces of animals with flowing blood. But when it comes to their urine, it is said that it is better to avoid that. Obviously, these are things that you don't come across on a daily basis, so not something you need to worry about. What about birds? Okay, so the urine and feces of birds are pure even if the bird is haram to eat by nature. So what does that mean? There are certain birds that we can eat, like chicken is a type of a bird. You can eat it. So because it's halal to eat, its urine and feces is pure. But what about certain birds that we can't eat, like pigeons, like crows, like sparrows? For them, it is said that though you cannot eat them, their feces is considered pure, but it is better to avoid their urine. Okay. Let's say you come across an animal and you doubt whether this animal has got flowing blood or not. There's a doubt, and I'm looking at the second last one. Doubtful animal, flowing blood. So there's a doubt whether this animal has flowing blood. What that means is that if you're unsure, then their feces is considered pure, but the urine should be avoided as a matter of precaution. So you should avoid it. On the other hand, if you have an animal that you don't know whether it is halal to eat or haram to eat, for both those cases, both urine and feces is considered to be pure. Okay, so inshallah, please go through this in your time next week. Next week, when we start the next lesson, before that, we'll just have a quick knowledge check. Right, we'll do some multiple choice. So please go through this, and if you have any questions, you can also ask me in the meantime. So this is to do with urine and feces. Right, when it comes to, before we get to dead bodies, when it comes to semen, the simple law: any animal whose blood is flowing, whether halal to eat or haram to eat, their semen is impure. Okay. What about dead bodies? So when we talk about dead bodies, we're talking about this concept called al-mita. Right? What is al-mita? What do we mean by dead bodies? What we mean by dead bodies is any body of an animal that has not been slaughtered in an Islamic way. So naturally, humans, right, when they die, their bodies are considered to be impure. Similarly, any animals that are not slaughtered in an Islamic way, their body is considered to be najis also. Alaikum salam. Alaikum salam. Right? So, definition of a dead body: the dead body refers to an animal whose death was caused by means other than proper Islamic slaughtering. As an example, you see a cow on the road, right? That cow may have died either through natural death, or that cow may have been killed due to an accident. It did not die because of a Islamic slaughtering method. So if you touch that carcass, then you become najis by it, right? Because that body is considered to be najis. So dead bodies of humans and animals with flowing blood, right? So those animals that have flowing blood. Again, what is flowing blood? When you slaughter those animals and blood gushes out with force, that's who you call an animal with flowing blood. However, there are certain exceptions. So, for example, the exceptions include those who are martyrs. So, martyrs are individuals' bodies, of human beings who died. Now, we know that normal human beings, when they die, their body is considered to be najis until you may do ghusl of it. But martyrs, their bodies are considered pure, right? And even those people who have been washed for punishment or retribution. So, when you give capital punishment, right, those individuals, their bodies are also considered to be pure. What about parts of your body that get severed? So you are a living person and your hand gets severed, for example, unfortunately due to an accident. Those parts of your body that get severed are also considered to be impure. They're najis. So if you, let's say, have a hand that's been amputated, that hand is impure. If you touch it, it becomes impure. One thing to note is that how does something become najis when you get into contact with it? And something for everyone to remember is that najasa only gets transferred through moisture. Right? So if there's sufficient moisture on a najis object and you touch it to the extent that that moisture gets transferred to your hand, that's how najasa is being transferred. So when you looked at those 10 things that were inherently najis, some of them were liquids. So obviously you will get najis because of that. But for example, there's something that is in a non-liquid form that is najis, like shaking hands with a disbeliever. If their hand is dry and you touch their hand, you don't become najis. But if their hand is wet to the extent that if you touch their hand and that wetness transfers into your hand, that's only how you become najis. So similarly with a dead body, if you were to touch a carcass, right, there has to be sufficient moisture for your hand to get that najasa from that body. Another thing to remember is that how many times that najasa keep getting transferred. Right? So the fuqaha have said that najasa only is transferred up to 2 intermediaries. What does that mean? As an example, suppose that my hand gets najis because I've touched, my hand touched urine as an example, right? So my hand got najis. Now my hand is still najis. Now I go and I shake someone's hand, they will also become najis, or their hand will also become najis. But if they were to go and shake someone else's hand, that third person will not become najis. So from the point of contact with something that's impure, 2 things can become impure, but not the third thing. Okay? What about those parts of dead bodies that don't contain life? So, we have got hair, we have got wool on a sheep, we have got fur, animals have got fur. What about bones? So, the fuqaha have said that those parts of your body that fall from your body, like your hair, like your nails, those are pure. Right? So, unlike a full hand or like a piece of your leg that gets cut off, that is impure. But things that don't contain life, for example, they don't have blood in them, right? There's no essence of life in them. They are considered pure. And this applies whether the animal is lawful or unlawful to eat. What about animals without flowing blood, like reptiles, like fish? When they die, regardless of how they die, because fish normally do not have an Islamic slaughtering method, they're fine. Those bodies are considered to be pure. What if you go and you buy meat or fat or leather from a Muslim? Because you're buying that fat and meat and leather from the Muslim, that is considered to be pure, right? Because as long as there's reason to believe that those things were slaughtered Islamically and properly. Naturally, when you buy something from a Muslim, there is a assumption that they have been slaughtered Islamically. And the same thing goes with if you're buying something in a Muslim land, right? So for that also, you can assume that those things are tahir. But whether you can consume them, there's a level of ishkal, or there's a level of doubt about that. So what does that mean? That means that I go and I buy a piece of leather from a Muslim, I can wear it and I can perform my salat in it because it's pure. If I buy some meat, I can not only consume it, I can also, if I need to turn it into something that I need to wear, you can also do that, or fat. What about items from non-Muslims? So if you buy some items from non-Muslims, and if you know that they have been slaughtered Islamically, then they're considered pure, even though you're buying them from a non-Muslim. You can wear them, so you can wear leather that you buy from a non-Muslim, provided that you have sufficient certainty that that has been coming from an animal that was slaughtered Islamically. Even if you're buying it from a non-Muslim, you can wear that leather, you can pray on it. So that's to do with al-mita, right? What about blood? So dam. You have a question? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, for example, say we go to a lot of shops nowadays,
yeah.
and we have no clue where they, for example, there'll be we're buying it from a retail store.
Yeah.
Before that, we don't know who the wholesaler was. Before that, we don't know who the manufacturer was. Because now everything is global.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to trace back where it's coming from. So in such a case, what would you say?
So because we're living in a non-Muslim land, there's going to be more doubt about whether that thing is pure or not, right? So when it comes to buying, let's say for example, a piece of leather, you need to get that level of comfort that that leather is coming from a animal that has been slaughtered properly. If you don't know that, then what we're saying here is that you may be able to wear it, but that if you're talking about leather, but if you're talking about things that to wear, right? So if you buy something that is coming from a non-Muslim in a non-Muslim land, you need to obtain that level of certainty that that animal was slaughtered in an Islamic way. Otherwise, it may be considered to be impure. So unfortunately, in this day and age where we live, buying things that are made from the produce of animals, if you don't have that level of certainty, then you cannot actually buy it. And if you do buy it, you cannot actually wear it while performing salah. So you can wear it, but it does not mean that you can consider yourself to be performing those actions that require purity. So if you were to buy a piece of leather, you don't know where it comes from. When it comes to praying, you have to take it off. Yeah, but you can wear it, because wearing something that's impure does not cause you to sin. You're not sinning. But you cannot wear it and then perform your salah, because you need to be pure. And in a non-Muslim land, the chances of that leather being pure or not, you have a doubt about it. You cannot get certainty about it. So you cannot pray in it. Okay. When it comes to blood, now blood of an animal with gushing blood, what that means is that again, those animals and humans whose blood gushes forth, if their vein is cut off, the blood of those animals is impure, it's najis. So if you, for example, you find blood on your body, right, that blood makes your body impure, it needs to be removed. Similarly, blood that comes from an animal where it's basically hasn't been slaughtered Islamically, that blood is also considered impure. But what about animals that don't have gushing blood, like fish? Their blood is fine, it's pure. What if you find blood and you are not sure if it is from an animal with gushing blood or not? What do you do about it? Suppose you find blood on your clothes. Now you don't know if that blood comes from an animal that had like a sheep, or it comes from a fish, for example, right? It is in that case, then you can consider it to be pure. I think issue number 4 or 2 is not very relevant. What about blood that remains in a Islamically slaughtered animal, right? We said that blood is impure, but the blood that remains in a slaughtered animal remains pure. So when you slaughter a cow, for example, the blood that remains in the body of that cow is pure, unless that blood has been contaminated by an external object. So suppose that blood came into contact with a najis knife, for example, then that blood becomes najis. But if it remains in the body, it is pure. Sometimes you scratch yourself, you may find that there's some liquid that's coming out and you're unsure if that's blood or if it's some kind of a pus or the liquid is yellowish. In that case also, you don't need to investigate any further and it's considered to be pure unless you can see that it is pure blood. Okay. So we said that one of the 10 things, there were 2 things that were considered haram or najis. They were beer and wine, right? So what does that mean? So we're here talking about not every type of alcohol. We're talking about here those type of alcohol that have been created through a process of fermentation, most likely from either grape juice or raisins or dates. Then through that process, that liquid becomes an intoxicant, like wine. If you touch it, you become najis. But you will find that there are certain things that are found in medicines, right, that have alcohol in them. So there are certain types of alcohols that are by nature, they're alcoholic, right? Ethanol as an example. It's not fermented. It is something that by its nature is already alcoholic. Yet you will find that when they are found in medicine, you can consume that medicine. It goes on your hand, like perfumes as an example. They have an element of alcohol. But that is not alcohol that has been fermented for purposes of drinking for intoxication. You will not find that medicines or cough syrups have got wine in them. They have other types of spirits and alcohols. Those things are fine. What about grape juice? That if it starts to boil, does it become najis? Because fermentation requires a process of boiling in certain ways that it transfers. But if grape juice starts to boil, doesn't mean that it becomes najis all of a sudden. And there are certain things for it to become najis. It only becomes najis. So until and unless it boils down to a level of 2/3, then only can you consume it. Same thing goes with raisin juice and date juice. They don't become impure just by boiling them. And beer, or what you call fuqqa, right? Again, it is something that is fermented through barley, through other types of wheat, malt. That specific liquid is considered to be impure as well. So you can't consume it, nor can you touch it. So when we talk about alcoholic beverages, it's not every type of alcohol. It is that alcohol that has been fermented and it has become intoxicant. Those things, if you touch them, then your hand becomes, or your part of your body becomes najis. What else do we have? That's it actually. So if you can see, just to recap, because I know some of you joined later. So as I was mentioning to the rest of the group, one of the things to remember is that the general principle is that everything is tahir by default. Kullu shay'in laka tahirun. Everything you see around you by default, you consider it to be pure. But there are 10 things that are inherently, by their essence, najas. They have the ability to cause najasa, and when they make something najis, that is called, that thing that becomes najis is called mutanajis, right? And they can never become pure. You cannot make urine pure. So these 10 things are always impure, and they have the ability to make something impure as well. And those things and impurity arises through two different things, right? You have physical impurity, which is where a particular najis thing that we have mentioned in the slides comes into contact with you. It makes you najis. That's called khabath. That's where you're physically impure. And when it comes to spiritual impurity, that's where you have not really come into contact with anything that's najis, but you enter a state of impurity that requires you to perform wudu, for example. So as an example, you need to perform your prayers, right? Your body is completely tahir, but you cannot perform your prayers until you have done wudu, right? So that's what you call being in a state of hadas. So in order to get out of that state of hadas, you either need to perform minor ablution like wudu or major ablution like ghusl. But for khabas, things that are on your body, you can just make yourself pure by removing them. Inshallah, in the future lessons, we will talk about how to remove these kind of najasat. In the next lesson next week, we have spoken about the things that are inherently najis. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about things that make something pure. How can something be made pure? For example, you can make something pure by using water, but there are many other things that can make something pure from becoming impure. I want to leave the next session just for any question and answers about any other topics, because if I talk about too many things in fiqh, it's going to become difficult. So any other questions, any other queries that you want to have Q&A session on? Yes.
I want to understand, let's say when you go for jihad, right, and then you become a martyr, then your body is like that. But what about capital punishment? What's the reasoning behind that?
About why that body is pure? Because for what happens is that in capital punishment, before you are going to be punished or before you die, you actually have to go through a period of washing in an Islamic country. So what happens is that a person who dies, right, their body is impure. Then you give them ghusl and then they become pure. Whereas for capital punishment, that person had already been given a ritual washing. Now they die. Now you kill them. Their body remains pure. That's why. So it's not that they become pure after they were killed. You don't give them ghusl. You were already giving them a washing before you then gave them that capital punishment. So their body then remains tahir.
So I'm sure you're aware, since someone dies, all of the fluids in their body, they start to leak out. I mean, everything from urine, blood, all of it. So doesn't that contaminate them, even though they're shaheed?
No, they're considered, their entire body is considered pure. So everything that's inside them is considered pure. Any questions on the Zoom call? Yep.
So say you bought leather from someone, like non-Muslim,
and you know that it wasn't like the animal wasn't suited like rightfully. So would you still be able to wear it, or would that be haram?
You can wear it, but you can't wear it and then perform an obligatory action that requires you to be in a state of purity. Yes.
What if the animal died like a natural death?
Yes. So if an animal dies a natural death or is killed by an accident, because they were not slaughtered Islamically, their body is impure, is najis. So everything, so skin is part of the body. So their skin is also. So if you were to cut off their skin and use it to make leather, naturally that leather would not be something you can wear to perform your salah.
Okay, but it could be used for decoration or something like that.
You can, but then you have to be careful that you don't make them, put them in an area where that requires sanctity, that requires purity.
Okay.
Yeah. So roadkill as an example, right, of a animal that can be eaten, that can be slaughtered. If you were to touch that animal, because it died through an accident, it's going to be impure. And if it died naturally, because it wasn't slaughtered, it's going to be impure as well. Only those that have flowing blood. Without flowing blood, it doesn't matter, it's fine.
Sorry, there's a question there.
Is there a question? Right.
Two questions.
Everything could you please explain the section with the disbeliever? So when we talk about disbelievers, we are naturally talking about the following categories. We're talking about an atheist. We're talking about a person who believes in many gods, so a mushrik. And we're also talking about specific subsections within Muslims, like those who do ghulu, right? Those who exaggerate the claims of divinity for the imams. They're also considered to be impure. Important point. Those who are nawasib, who have outright hatred for the Ahlul Bayt, Ayatollah Sistani considers them to be impure also. And those who are the Khawarij, obviously we don't have them anymore, but these are subsections within the Islamic Ummah who are considered to be impure. And then, except for Christians and except for Jews, for whom Ayatollah Sistani has said that their impurity has not been established, so for them, they are considered to be pure. You can shake hands with them, they do not make something impure. But like a person who is an atheist or a person who is a Hindu, for example, they are considered impure. But one thing to remember is that you come across an individual, you do not know what is their religion. You do not need to investigate. You can consider them to be pure. See, Islam is making things easy for us. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult for you to go and ask every person what is their religion. Unless and until there is an outright, full-blown confirmation that a person is an atheist. He himself is confessing, I'm an atheist. Or someone through their practices you can see is committing shirk, right? Those individuals, then you can consider them to be kafir, and therefore they are impure. But if you go into a restaurant, you come across waiters, you don't know what their religion is, you can consider them to be pure. So that's fine. Yes.
So say like there's a restaurant which has halal food, right? But like the people who are cooking the food, the chefs, what if they Hindu? Would we be able to buy like food from there? Or
because you do not know, you can consider it that you don't need to perform any investigation, and you can consider, because you don't know who's behind the kitchen, right? Now you have to go and perform investigation. Now you need to go behind the kitchen. Now you need to look at what they're doing, and then you need to go and ask them, what is your religion? Some people may not want to tell you what their religion is. So then if you can't perform investigations to get confirmation that someone is a kafir, then it's fine.
But say like you know that it's a Hindu person, right?
How would you know?
No, like you know him from a long time.
So then you have confirmation, you have certainty that this person is a Hindu. Then actually, then if they were to provide you with something which, if they were to use their hands, and their hands were moist, and therefore anything they give you, the moisture has transferred, then that thing becomes najis also, yes. And naturally when they're cooking, moisture will be transferred, so you must avoid.
So anyway, this might be a silly question,
No,
but
no silly question.
I can't recall. Is saliva also considered to be of a disbeliever? So for example, I knew in high school, after each time someone would take a bite of the burger and they would share it across. So would that also
Absolutely.
be considered?
That's moisture. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Please show the next slide. I want to take a screenshot. Which slide? Is it?
I think slide 4 and 5.
Slide 4. Okay. Just make it large. Any other questions about anything else? Jurisprudence,
Assalamu
theology.
alaikum. Can you hear me?
Salam. Yes.
I just wanted to ask, Christians are considered Ahl Kitab, but don't they commit shirk, making them disbelievers?
So that's a good question, and it's a question that's asked whether, for example, Christians who believe in the divinity of Jesus or who believe in Trinity, that they commit mushrik. The one thing is that, remember, not all Christian denominations believe in the concept of Trinity. Not all Christian denominations believe in the divinity of Hazrat Isa. So for you to then know which of these Christians are, Catholic Christians or Trinitarian Christians, in that case, then the fuqaha have said that it is fine for you to consider them to be pure.
Perfect. Jazakallah.
And also one more question, sorry, yeah, I'll come to you, is that we are also talking about Christians here who we do not know whether they are Christians in the sense that they are Christians who believed in the true message of Hazrat Isa. Naturally, nowadays it's hard to find those, but they may be that certain individuals who are Christians do not believe in everything in the Bible to the extent that they believe in the divinity of Jesus, but they consider themselves to be Christians. They are still considering that there is one God, so they are still following a monotheistic religion. And majority of the Christians in this day and age, you do not know which denomination they belong to. So for them, it's fine for them to be considered to be pure. Yes.
What about extremist Muslims? Would they also be counted?
So extremists in both instances, like if you have one who are the Walat, right? They are extremists in the sense that they exaggerate the divinity of the Ahlul Bayt. If they are doing hulu, they are going to the level of shirk, then those are also considered to be kuffar. And those who are going to the other extreme of, when it comes to open hatred towards the Ahlul Bayt, they're also considered to be impure. So they will be treated just like a disbeliever.
So, for example, the Wahhabis, the Nasri, they consider to be impure.
Again, not all Wahhabis may openly express. See, that's why it's very important in Islam to perform your investigation, right? And even when it comes to capital punishment, there are so many rules that need to be followed for you to say that yes, this person has committed something. So if it comes to a person who you may consider to be an extremist, but it really depends on how and what level of their hatred is towards the Ahlul Bayt. Now, if you make an assumption that the Wahhabis have open hatred, you'll find that Wahhabis, some of them don't have hatred, but they follow the teachings of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. So they're just following the creed and the theology of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, but they don't have any Nasibiyya towards the Ahlul Bayt. But so a Nasibi doesn't have to belong to a certain sect. There can be someone who has open hatred towards Ahlul Bayt, and therefore those individuals will be considered to be impure. Yes.
I have a question regarding like slaughtering, right? So when you go hunting, you have to like first shoot the animal. Would that and then once you slaughter it, would it be halal? Because you can't slaughter an animal which is in pain.
So remember, when you hunt, you have to make sure you slaughter them before they die. If you hunted them and you've kind of incapacitated them, that they're lying on the ground, then you need to slaughter them. But if they die because of that hunting, naturally they died because there was not an Islamic way of doing it, then you have to basically consider their body to be impure. Any other questions? Any other questions, non-fiqh related, theology? Everyone's good? No? Okay. So the way that we're going to follow these lessons of Tahara is we're going to talk about, we've spoken about the Ainul Najasa, meaning those Najasas that are inherently impure. Then we're going to talk about the things that make something pure. And then we'll go into some of the rules relating to, the rules regarding going to a lavatory, rules relating to how to perform wudu. Because then slowly and steadily we're going to get to a point where we need to then understand also the types of water. Because remember, when you want to use something or water to clean yourself, you need to know the type of water that you're using. So we're going to inshallah talk about that as well. Why is this all important? What is the ruling on cats in Islam? So cats are not considered, so you can keep a cat, they are not considered to be impure, but the fuqaha have said that the hair of a cat, and I think it's maybe even if it's to the extent of even if there's 4 hairs that are on a prayer mat, that prayer mat you cannot pray on it. But the cats do not make you najis like a dog. So it becomes quite difficult to keep cats at home because you don't know where they've been shedding hair. And therefore then if they have, then that's something where you can't pray on. Yeah.
So if I just need to confirm, but as far as I'm aware, Adil Sistani recently changed his fatwa on that. He said that cats are permissible even if the hair is on your clothes, you can reach a salah.
You have to show me, I haven't come across that. But you can let me know. Yeah.
But you know, like to the old fatwa, right? Do the hairs have to be visible or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if they're not, then it's fine. But if you have a cat that's roaming around a place for a considerable period of time, sometimes you will be able to see it, and sometimes if you can't see it, then it's fine. So keeping cats is fine, but they don't make something, they're not najis in the sense that dogs and pigs are najis inherently. But you can't eat them.
Yeah.
So don't eat cats, guys. Any other questions? So how this is going to work is that next week, inshallah, we're going to have a pop quiz, but it's going to be a pop quiz. I'll keep it on Slido. So we'll just have the questions online. Everyone can log into their phones and they can give the answers, and then we'll see where everyone stands in terms of their understanding, and then we'll continue. The point of all of this is, why you might be asking, why am I here? Why am I having to go through this? Because as you grow older, and actually even now, because all the obligatory actions, if you're over the age of 15 or 14 years and 7 months from a lunar calendar perspective, because these obligatory actions such as performing salats, such as fasting and going for Hajj and any of the other items that require purity, you need to know these rules. Because if you don't know these rules, then you may be into a risk of having your obligatory actions becoming void.
No. So it was there, but it's removed again. So it's back to the previous fatwa, which says that as an obligatory precaution, if it's 4 and more.
It is 4 and more. So let me explain also, a lot of the times you'll find in the Risala this terms obligatory precaution and recommended precaution, right? What is the difference between an obligatory precaution? Firstly, why is it that some of the Maharaja give a obligatory precaution? They don't give a fatwa. What's the ruling behind that? Why is it? When the jurists are coming up with rulings, in the school of Ahlul Bayt, for a fuqaha to be able to give a ruling, they use 4 sources, right? What are those 4 sources that they use? The Quran, the traditions or the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt, whether they be words or actions or confirmations, intellect and ijma or consensus, right? Using these 4 primary sources, they are able to derive Islamic rulings. Now what happens is that in certain instances, the particular jurist has not been able to find sufficient evidence for a particular ruling. And because they have not been able to find sufficient evidence, they are not able to or be in a position to give a fatwa. In that instance, they say that it is better to perform precaution. What does precaution mean? Precaution means that if, for example, something is considered to be wajib or mustahab, the jurist doesn't know. The narrations are unclear. They say the precaution is considered to be wajib. Always do the more conservative thing. If something is considered to be makruh or haram, if there's an obligatory precaution, what that means is that you can exercise precaution in the sense of doing just considering it to be haram. But what's the difference between obligatory precaution and recommended precaution? When a jurist says obligatory precaution, that means you have the permission to follow the fatwa of another most knowledgeable jurist. And if they have given a fatwa, you can follow it. Remember, when you're doing a taqleed of a marja, you do not have the freedom to go and pick and choose between all the different maraja, right? If your marja has given you a ruling, you have to follow that ruling. If they've given you a fatwa. But if they say something is obligatory precaution, that means that if you can find another knowledgeable at the same level jurist, and if they have given a fatwa, you can follow that fatwa. But in a recommended precaution, that requirement of having the most knowledgeable marja is not required. You can follow any marja's fatwa on it if it's a recommended precaution. So obligatory precaution and recommended precaution, there's a difference between that. Any other burning questions, burning issues?
Any other questions?
No?
No questions.
Questions? Any questions on Zoom? No questions on Zoom. All good? Everyone happy? Okay. If there are no questions on Zoom as well, you are free to exit. All right. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد